how many refugees has Poland taken?
0.
And you're proud of that?
If you are asking me about Muslims illegal immigration, none, not even one, will come to Poland. Not even one if it's illegal. We took over 2 million Ukrainians who are working, who are peaceful in Poland. We will not receive even one Muslim because this is what we promised.
But I asked
this
not about illegal
failed.
immigrants, I asked about refugees. And Jean-Claude Juncker, the Commission President, says that you're racist. You sound proud of the fact that you haven't taken any refugees.
Of course, because this is what our people are expecting from our government. That's number one. This is why our government was elected. But this is why Poland is so safe. This is the reason why we had not even one terrorist attack. Look at the streets in Poland, and we can be called populists, nationalists, racists. I don't care. I care about my family and about my country.
What do you think about Polish government taking so many refugees from Ukraine?
I mean, I think to an extent we should be welcoming. Especially for me, and I've lived as an immigrant overseas, and sort of the people that were very welcoming towards me in Japan is something that I would like to do for others.
Yeah.
Of course, though, I do understand that our economy also has its limitations. We cannot take an infinite amount of people, and also there are other factors to consider, such as the crime rates or things like that. But I generally think as long as the people sort of, if they know what they want to do here and they behave with culture, I don't have a problem with welcoming more.
Yeah, pretty much all the same opinion, except maybe we should. I'm open to immigrants, and I think that we should take immigrants. However, I would say we should have a responsible and smart like immigrant politics, right? So we don't take in as many as there are. We should rather maybe not select, but we should have structured and like more smarter and more responsible immigration process.
Hey, one thing I found out because I just asked someone over there. He told me that there haven't been any protests against the refugees here, but back in Dublin, Ireland, there have already been more than 10 protests just against refugees. We have only taken maybe around 100,000 refugees.
No, this is mostly because it's also Warsaw. I think people in Warsaw are bound to be more welcoming towards immigrants.
Just like in every other city, right?
Like
Cities are more liberal.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
But then I also I do think there are statistics that, for example, in south of Germany, the increased amount of immigrants led to higher crime rates, which is bound to happen if you have more people. However, I just think that's why it's very important that the people that we welcome have the culture sort of not. Well, this is gonna sound silly, but not to commit.
Not to what?
Not to commit crimes.
Okay.
Sort of to find something meaningful to do here.
They have a purpose to coming here. I mean, they're escaping, of course, like conflicts, but it's also important that they come here and have sort of a plan for them. Because I don't know the statistics and like socioeconomics of crime rates. I think that in neighborhoods in which there's high unemployment, crime happens. There's more crime essentially. So I mean, you could ask Alan, my mother, because he's the social. He knows everything about politics.
Yeah, that's true. Let me add something.
Please do.
I think that there's one of the central issues regarding immigration policy here in Poland is not only in Poland. I think in general, in terms of integrating people into communities, and which I think is one of the main. The lack of integration is one of them, and assimilation is one of the main reasons why often immigrants, refugees, whoever they may be, go down the road of crime. I think the lack of integration and people feeling welcome into communities, I think that's one of the main drivers of crime, not necessarily people and like the number of people coming in. I think in terms of Polish job market, there are deficiencies, and the higher intake of immigrants is helpful for the Polish government, for the Polish economy, and I think Polish economic growth over the past few years has been the intake of immigrants has been quite helpful for that. However, there have to be obviously some limits. I think it's also worth noting is that the fact that Poland has taken in I think it's a few million people, but not all of them have stayed.
It's more than 2 million.
More than 2 million, I think that's right. But it's not the case that these people are here right now. Most of them have moved. Some of them have moved back to Ukraine. Some of them have moved further on to Western Europe primarily. And also referring to what you were asking before. I think here in Poland, the response towards Ukrainian refugees has been more welcoming than in Western Europe.
For sure.
I think that's what my friend said, that we are on the front line, we are bordering Ukraine, and because of that, the sense of a potential threat from Russia, the kind that Ukraine is now experiencing, could come here, which is not felt in Western Europe. It won't be felt in Ireland, it won't be felt in France, UK, Germany, wherever. We feel it here, and because of that, people have been more welcoming than people in Western Europe have been. Though I think the response in Western Europe has also been quite welcoming as well. But here, we've been very welcoming. That was 3 years since the war has started. Now these sentiments, I think, are slowly shifting, diminishing a bit, which is also, I think, quite natural, because after 3 years, it is to some extent understandable that people would expect these refugees to integrate more within the Polish society. I think there should be a bit more efforts in this area. But I think in general, these are the reasons for this response.
What do you think the reasons why Russia invaded Ukraine 3 years ago?
I think that's a very complex issue.
I know, because I feel like you could give me some good answers.
I think there is still a strong sense of Russian imperialism within the.
I agree with that.
Especially within the Russian elites circle. I don't know. I have no idea what it is. What's the sentiment among ordinary Russian citizens? But I think among the elites, the ruling class, which essentially is still the same as it had been during the communist years. The people who are now in power in Russia have originated in many cases from the elites that govern the Soviet Union. And that mindset of having control over this part of Europe, which historically parts of it, Ukraine, Belarus, the Baltic Seas, have been parts of Russia, or the phase that preceded it for centuries really. These cities have still not come to terms with the fact that these countries aren't Russia anymore, and they just find it natural to some extent for them that these parts should be Russian, these countries should be Russian, and have not accepted the New World Order, which has evolved after in the 1990s. And I don't think that this is going to change. I think that this mindset, as long as the current group, because it's a very large group of people in power in Russia, does not change, and I don't see currently any prospects for that changing, there won't be a shift in Russian policy, in Russian expansionism in Eastern Europe. That doesn't mean that this is necessarily going to be like war here or in the Baltic states. I think that threat has been a bit overhyped by media and politicians for various reasons. I think that threat exists. I don't think it's a very real threat, but a threat of some form of interference in this region is going to remain for a very long time.
One of the biggest triggers for a Russian waged war towards Ukraine was the Ukraine wanted to join NATO, so that's kind of put a threat towards Russian Moscow.
I don't know exactly how exactly the Russian political class views NATO. To me, I find the excuse of NATO expansion being employed as an excuse for this interference, for this invasion that Russia conducted in Ukraine. I think that Ukraine joining NATO in no ways would threaten Russia's territorial integrity or safety in any way. I don't. The mindset in the West, all the countries that are NATO members, in no ways has in mind attacking Russia in any form. And I think the period, like from the collapse of the Soviet Union through the 90s and the 2000s, up until essentially the crisis in Georgia in 2008, and then what started happening in Ukraine, I think that shows that the West was clearly focused on building closer ties with Russia after the Soviet Union fell, and I think this shows that the West never had in mind threatening Russia, and that the Russian elite with Putin, Medvedev, and people who have been in charge for 20 odd years now, it's something in their minds and their yearning for a great Russia that used to exist. That is the main reason, and they use arguments such as Ukraine joining the EU, Ukraine joining NATO as excuses, because if Ukraine had joined NATO, if Ukraine joins NATO, that will be a definite end for any Russian territorial claims in Ukraine as a country. If Ukraine joins NATO, Russia will not be able.
Do you think so?
I think so. I think Russia. Obviously, that's just my guess.
Okay.
But I don't think. I think the Russian government, people in the Russian government, and the Russian military, as a matter of fact, they don't want a war with NATO. I think they are conscious. They must be conscious of the idea that attacking NATO would just cause a world Armageddon, and I think the sentiment there will be strong enough to stop them from a nuclear war. I think we also keep forgetting about China, for example. People tend to look at Russia and China as some extent as one evil against the West, whereas China, the Chinese government also has no interest in there being another world war. China has developed an economic power that would suffer greatly from a military conflict between NATO and Russia, and I think China's influence on Russia, economic influence on Russia, should not be understated when thinking about Russia going to war with NATO. I think China could dissuade Russia from doing that purely for their own economic and geopolitical interests.